Story 1. 15 was when I started down a tough path. I would not go to that sleepover that year. I would go be with my grandpa that summer. I would speak up about feeling hurt for not being invited to the Europe trip to my grandma before they went. I would hang out with my dad a lot more. I would get my mom and her boyfriend arrested so he would go away and she would change her life. Story 2. First thing I would do is start taking care of my health, both physically and mentally, as it is the most valuable investment because it truly is. I would also be more intentional about who I spend time with. At 15, you believe certain people and things matter much more than they actually do. Financially, I would start saving, learn about investing early, and definitely buy some Bitcoin in 2010. I am not even going to pretend I would not. Story 3. Study harder, start working out, look for part-time jobs, save money, try to remember the winning lottery numbers from when I turned 18. Story 4. Run to my grandparents' house and just be in the moment. Money is great, but it does not matter in the end. It is time. Time is everything. Story 5. It is a tough choice for me. Go meet my wife sooner than I did. B. Invest in Apple and other companies. Can I do both? Story 6. Find someone to take me in and leave my mother and stepfather's house. Cut off all contact. Call Child Protective Services. Begin therapy. Story 7. I would party harder, lose my virginity faster, and wear the clothes I did not have the courage to wear because I thought I was chubby. I was not. All the insecurities I had at the time are no longer plausible with the mindset I have now. Story 8. I would spend more time with my mother. I lost her when I was 18. If I could go back, I would hold her tighter, speak to her more gently, and not waste a single second pretending I had more time. I would walk away from my then boyfriend, the one who cheated on me, broke me down slowly, and left a trauma that still affects me at 28. We dated for 7 years, and I lost parts of myself I will never fully get back. If I could, I would choose peace over pain the first time. Story 9. I asked the waitress out at my first job. I still have no idea why I was oblivious back then. She spoke to me every day, and I even walked her home from the restaurant a few times. One time I even said, "If I were to ask you out, what would be your answer?" She replied, "Probably say yes." I never asked her out and quit the job soon after. I saw her at the restaurant a year later, and I saw her eyes light up when she saw me. I went home, looked up her name in the phone book, called her that week, and asked her out. We dated for about 3 months, but she had just come out of an abusive relationship, which made our relationship hard, too hard for 16-year-olds. I always think if I had just asked her out at 15, maybe I could have saved her from that pain. Story 10. Push very hard to get one particular medical diagnosis out of the way while young instead of having it thrust upon me in my 50s. Story 11. Spend more time with my grandmothers and make audio recordings of them telling me their favorite stories. I would give anything to hear their voices again. Story 12. Say, Mom, we need therapy, both together and separately, because if we don't, in 33 years I won't care if you are alive or dead, and you will miss out on knowing your grandchildren. Story 13. Tell my mother to get a mammogram without delay because she probably already had cancer at that time. In my country, all women over 50 receive an invitation to get a mammogram, and every 2 years after that, a new invitation is sent. It is covered by our mandatory health insurance, so we do not go bankrupt or need multiple jobs to pay for healthcare. My mother was afraid it would hurt, so she refused the first, second, and third invitations. If I could go back in time and convince her, she might still be alive. By the time she finally saw the general practitioner and had a blood test because she had not been feeling well for months, it was too late. She had likely been living with cancer for years. When it was discovered, she was beyond treatment options, and 3 weeks later, she passed away. I was 19 when that happened. Also, besides trying to save my mother, I could have saved myself from a lot of heartache and divorce by not giving the wrong men a chance. Story 14. Spend Father's Day with my dad instead of my first boyfriend and his family. My dad died 2 weeks later, and it took me years of therapy to forgive myself. Story 15. Am I 15 today or 15 back in 1991? 15 today with current memories, 15-year-old boys have a lot of conflict in their heads with hormones and identity questions. With my current brain and none of that, I would be focused on building good habits from a young age and seeing how well I can do in school if I apply myself. Also, with current memories, I know a lot of information technology and software basics that would provide a great foundation for diving into a very quick and lucrative software career at a very young age. Or I could pursue medicine and be one of those medical doctors who also writes software. I have worked for 3 such individuals at health software companies. Those people make substantial money. 15 in 1991 with current memories. Make, save, and invest as much money as possible during the 1990s while the market is booming. Go all in on Amazon when it has its initial public offering. Go all in on Bitcoin. Retire exceptionally rich. Story 16. I did not let my parents invest my college money into telecommunications stocks at the request of my neighbor. His children still had their college expenses paid for. Everything I saved since I was a child was lost. Story 17. Hit my stepdad back a lot quicker. He used to knock the living hell out of me and my mum. Took me until I was 15 to snap one day and hit him back. Once I did that, things changed. He realized he couldn't do it anymore because I would defend my mum or myself if he raised his hand again. Story 18. I do not want to be a nurse. I want my biggest challenge of the day to be that the internet is down and I cannot send my email. Story 19. Try to have more fun and not work as hard as I did. Trust people less. Get more sleep and exercise. Kiss the girl. Story 20. I'll choose Latin instead of Spanish as my third language in school. It would have saved me from the intensive course at university to obtain the Latinum. 2 semesters in a Cicero-infested hell. Story 21. I always imagine I would try to tell someone about something horrible that I know is going to happen in order to save lives. But I do not think people would listen. If you knew September 11th was going to happen and called someone to warn them, who would listen to a 15-year-old kid? I also think I would track down my partner so I would not have to go through all the bad relationships I had, but then realize we would not be who we are now without those experiences. I think I would change what I cared about in high school, travel more, and treasure moments more. Story 22. Meeting my wife. The moment she approaches me, I stand my ground as I should have and tell her I am not interested in continuing our conversation. I told her I did not want to talk to her, and she refused to respect that. I should have known then that would be the sign she would never respect anything I said to her. Instead, I let her push me into giving her what she wanted. When she still did not respect it, I told her the future does not work out for us, and I proved it by telling her something I knew she would believe I could not have known without knowing the future. Story 23. Start working out more, actually pay attention in Chinese class, practice Muay Thai seriously instead of fooling around, and take calculus. Story 24. Education after high school. Taking jobs seriously. Never getting into a serious relationship. Not having children until being married for several years. Definitely not marrying someone who has children. And save money. I was 10 to 15 years old years ago. If I could go back, I would stick to my original plan. As crazy as it sounded, I probably would be happier than I am now. I am happy, but my whole life would be different. Story 25. I have taken better care of myself. I stayed in touch with my girlfriend from 8th grade since we never forgot each other. We have helped each other avoid many bad relationships. We reconnected a few years ago, and now we are together. Story 26. Play it cool until I turn 18. Then I will finish college, sleep with more boys, and marry someone different than I did. Choose a career over being a stay-at-home mom and save for retirement right from the start. By the way, this is advice I would give all girls. Oh, and buy a couple of homes before 2008, and pay them off so I can move out of the country before Donald Trump takes office. Story 27. Hug my dad first and foremost. Tell him just how much I appreciate him. Then invest in Apple, Nvidia, Netflix, Costco, and MicroStrategy stocks in my Roth individual retirement account. Story 28. Stay away from Barry. Recognize that my mother is a narcissist and educate myself about what that means. Story 29. I leave my home instead of staying and trying to make unhappy people happy for the next 20 years. Story 30. The real question is, am I 15 in 2025, or do I go back to 1987? If I go back to 1987 with all my knowledge, then there is plenty I would work on. If I am 15 in 2025, well, I think I would pass, truth be told. Story 31. It is a difficult decision. I am unhappy with my current situation, but I love my children. One part of me wants to get a better education and move away from my hometown. The other part of me wants to follow my footsteps and make good investments for a secure life. Maybe if my children were still there regardless of who I met, then I would choose the path of better education, location, and career. Story 32. My dad will be very surprised in a few months when he teaches me how to drive, and I am a complete natural. Story 33. This would be a dilemma for me because I would know that my wife's parents are going to die in a car crash in 2 years. If I try to do something to stop it, such as a random teenager phoning them to delay their trip, then maybe I don't end up marrying her because her life is forever changed. If I don't try and she finds out that I had an opportunity but didn't act, then that destroys the relationship. Story 34. Play guitar. Turn down lessons because who needs guitar when you play trumpet? Learn languages. Spend less money at the bar and more money building storage units. And Mary Jo wanted to be with you, dummy. That's why she kept stopping by for juggling lessons. Story 35. Get in touch with all the people in my life whom I have lost since then and tell them how much I love them. Story 36. Getting treated for my depression. A lot of grief and a hospital visit could have been avoided if I had addressed it sooner. Story 37. Quit smoking marijuana, smoking cigarettes, vaping, drinking alcohol, and hanging out with most of the people I was with at the time. Start going to the gym and eating healthier, attend therapy, take my studies seriously, invest in good skincare, and save money. Story 38. Do not get pregnant at 15, then have a child at 16 years old. It is life-altering. It is all good now, though. I grew up really fast, but I am enjoying 2 toddler grandsons at 44 years old. So I ended up being the real winner here. By the way, I was not promiscuous. I was a preacher's daughter and an only child. I was in an extremely strict environment. Also, my parents did the best they knew how and unknowingly created trauma. It is all good. Story 39. First, get straight A's from that point forward. I am much smarter now. Second, do not leave the house on the day that I had a near-fatal car accident when I was 18 and a half. Story 40. Take better care of my teeth. Exercise regularly and maintain it. At least I would know I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and maybe manage it better. Choose a different college major, though I am not sure which one, and career. My social skills would improve, which would change a lot. Story 41. Having more gratitude. It is strange how one can become so hyper-focused on what one does not have instead of appreciating what one does have. Story 42. I just went ahead and came out of the closet, saving myself about 10 years of pretending to be attracted to men. Story 43. This would be 1972. I had become a renowned software developer by my 18th birthday. I retired as principal engineer in one of the world's largest information technology companies. Save every spare nickel. Do not smoke or get involved in drugs or alcohol. Find Steve Jobs and become an investor in Silent Partner. Invest in a few key stocks. Become fabulously rich. Use that wealth to effect positive change. Find some way to take down the Trumps before Donald has a chance to start his career. Story 44. I would accept myself as gay and not waste my life until age 40 trying to change my sexual orientation. What a waste of my life. Part 2. It is freshman year, and I am in a journalism class with some real jerk upperclassmen. I did not take to heart what they said because it was so rude. Story 45. I learned the lottery numbers from a big draw the year I turned 18, as I was not allowed to play as a minor in my country. I lived a peaceful life until the draw, without worrying. Story 46. Turn off the television. I was a television addict back then. Now I know it was all available decades later at the tap of a button. Plus, since I have all my memory, I have already watched it all. Start flirting with girls and some women. Start writing novels that were later written by authors who turned out to be unpleasant. Call my favorite musician, who was not famous yet, and tell her to stay away from one of them. Story 47. Sit down and summarize from memory the long list of random actions I need to take to meet my current wife, such as moving to Sweden because my internet at home was poor and the weather was not cold enough. Also, I need to buy Bitcoin. Story 48. See a doctor and take better care of my health. I was diagnosed with a permanent but treatable condition when I was 30, and it turned my life around at that point. But I still wonder how much better the prior 15 years might have been if it had happened sooner. Story 49. Pick a better career. Or set a reminder to buy 500 shares of Microsoft when it goes public. Yeah, this is better. Story 50. Gone to college. Both my parents and guidance counselor insisted I go to community college, which was a huge waste of time for me. I would have just avoided going to my guidance counselor and looked elsewhere for help going to a real college. Story 51. Clothes and hair. Next, interact with girls. Stop being critical or judgmental and taking everything too seriously. Story 52. See a psychiatrist to get my diagnosis. It has taken so much from me. There are some other things, but this is the biggest one. Story 53. Go hug my dad. Then promptly hug my grandmother. I will give the same answers every time I see this question. Story 54. I would not have gotten into a serious relationship. I would have studied harder in my computer programming class. Who knew back in 1980 that computers would be everything in the future? Certainly not me. Story 55. I would like to say that I would buy Bitcoin or have stayed invested in Facebook when I bought it at $30 per share. But in the end, I am 40, happily married to the most amazing wife I could have dreamed of. I would not change a single thing, for if I had, life might have taken me down a different road and I would have missed out on the life I have now. Story 56. I befriended a girl who clearly wanted to be my friend. I think we would have gotten along great, but I was too unaware to realize it. Story 57. Cry and miss my children, knowing I will never see them again unless I rebuild the relationship with my ex and have children with her at the right times. Story 58. Damn, a total makeover. Learn to be more positive and spend time helping others. Make an effort in school. Stop trying so hard to be liked, especially by the cool kids. Story 59. Go around and apologize for how I treated those people who died too early or too brutally. Get my paternal grandmother to visit a better doctor before her cancer returned. I do not start drinking when I am 16, and when I become a senior, I treat the girl I met at a pep rally better so she will stay. Finally, I study in my true career field, music. Story 60. Hug my mother more. Be more open to the young men who told me as adults they liked me in high school. Do not date adults when I am a teenager. Do not go to that graduation party in 1994. Story 61. Do not stand on the computer chair with wheels to fix the blinds. I fell onto the computer desk, landing on my back and fracturing my tailbone. I never told my parents about it, and my father shouted at me for moving the monitor and not putting it back. This injury has caused me a lifetime of back problems and was only diagnosed this year, 15 years later, when I had an X-ray for another issue. Story 62. Considering that was 2 years ago, I should have ended my relationship sooner. That fish was dead not long after it hit the water. Maybe I should have studied more and started the things I am doing now back then as well. There is not much to change from that time. Maybe. Story 63. Convince my father that his girlfriend is not the right person and remove her from our lives. Encourage him to agree to buy the remote beach house instead of refusing because it is far from my friends. Story 64. When the cute girl in 9th grade passes me a note during the first week of class, I smile at her and eventually ask her to eat lunch together. Story 65. Have the confidence to ask out the girl I always liked before the popular obnoxious guy did. Invest in Apple before Steve Jobs revealed the iPhone. Slap the cigarettes out of my dad's mouth. Maybe it could have extended his life. Have the neurosurgeon remove the rest of my brain tumor so I could have some of my eyesight left. Story 66. Do not get in the car. I seriously met a boy, got in his car, went to a party, and spent the next 3 years of my life learning things that would take me years to unwind. Story 67. I would go to school for fashion. Dance has offered me a beautiful life, but fashion is where my heart truly lies. Story 68. Do not date the man who gave me human papillomavirus that caused cancer and ruined my ability to have biological children. Also, do not get married at 20. Do not listen when mom tells me not to date anyone at work. I believe I missed out on someone who could have been a great husband because of this advice. Additionally, I would tell myself not to invest so much effort and love into one of my brothers. I cried a lot chasing his approval and love over the years, only to have him disown me when our other brother died because we have different political views. Story 69. Dear Vice President Gore, as you navigate the uncertain days following the 2000 election, I urge you not to concede prematurely. The controversy surrounding the hanging chads and the recount will play a pivotal role in determining the true outcome. Only by standing firm and allowing the legal process to unfold will the rightful decision be reached. There are greater challenges ahead, including threats that only a few recognize. Awareness of these dangers can help guide actions towards securing a safer future. I encourage you to consider the implications carefully and take the necessary steps to steer us onto a better timeline. The decisions made now will resonate through history. Sincerely, a concerned traveler. Story 70. Oh man, perfect. My education was messed up, and when I was 15, I made a regrettable decision. My parents tried and failed to homeschool me, so I repeated grade 2. When I was 15, we moved provinces, and I had basically covered half of the content for grade 9. I had decent grades, so they gave me the choice of grade 9 or 10. I chose 10 and was finally with people my own age. I failed a class for the first time after that. It would have been better to review and be ahead than to struggle to figure out what basics I had missed. Plus, socially, grade 9 is when people form their high school cliques. I would have been less of an outsider. Though I guess if I retain all my memories, I would not be too interested in being friends with all those kids. Focus on studying, get a scholarship, and get to university. Story 71. My mother died a month before my 15th birthday. I would tell my younger self not to try to replace her love with the imperfect love I received from certain relationships, but to make myself a priority and learn what I need to feel whole and fearless. Story 72. So easy. I would stop worrying about how people think of me. I would stop caring about the bullies. Story 73. Personally, I would have started anxiety medication earlier and shaved my head. Globally, that would have been around 2012 to 2014, so I probably could not do much. Maybe leak things like Epstein's Island or Trump's. Grab them by the pussy comments early before Make America Great Again has had time to gain momentum. Or, if there was time, tell Barack Obama not to say anything mean about Donald Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Maybe Trump would decide not to run after that. Story 74. I would work harder in school, get a job, save money, and go to college. I would not worry about relationship issues or even friends at that point. I would focus all my energy on studying and getting myself to college to have a successful future. Story 75. Apologize to my parents and focus on school. I was a teenage runaway who was manipulated by an older man. I am only now healing and getting my life in order in my 30s. Story 76. Do everything the same until I turn 17. Go to that same very small house party and let my friend introduce me to her new friend. Just focus all my energy on her and see where it goes. The life I would have lived may have been completely different with her as my primary motivation. Story 77. Around that age, around 1983, I inherited a significant amount of money. It was enough to change my life if it were invested and left alone, but my mother spent half of it, and by the time I was 20, I had spent the other half. I signed whatever was put in front of me because I was a kid. Looking back, I would want to find a way to keep my mother away from it and then invest it all into Microsoft stock and later into Amazon stock. I would do many other things differently too, but that was the primary factor that changed my life trajectory. Story 78. I would be nicer to my dad and my sister. I was a dumb teenager and I know I hurt them both. They are gone now. I would have one more year with my dad. I would hug him and ask him all the questions. The same with my sister. I would talk to my grandma and ask her all the questions. I would also start writing sooner. I would do better in school, and I would figure out a way to make sure I get published and never have to do anything other than write for the rest of my life. I would like to have a better relationship with everyone who is no longer here. Story 79 by NVIDIA, Tesla, Apple, Netflix, and Amazon. Mine Bitcoin as much as possible. Leicester City to win the Premier League in 2011 to 2012. Jenson Button to win the 2012 Canadian Grand Prix when he was in last place. Story 80. That would be 1965 in Bumfuck County, United States of America. I would go to my parents and tell them, it's called manic depression. God damn it, that is why my grades are awful. It is not me. It is not a teenage thing. It is depression. Can we get me some help? It was not until much later that I learned about all that. I was totally messed up in high school and missed getting into a good university. I finally overcame it and eventually graduated with honors. Story 81. The biggest changes? I would get the right diagnosis and style my curly hair correctly. I would also make more subtle changes. I would be more active in the choices made about my future. Worry way less about dating and appreciate being alone. Be less scared about being too much. Story 82. Part of me wants to tell myself about cancer coming in 4 years, but I think that would be worse for me emotionally. I will go with the Bitcoin advice. That is lighter. Story 83. If you do the same thing, that is how this usually works because you do not get to change the past without consequences. You did that, now accept it and change something about it because you will make the same mistake differently years later if you never learned. Also, I would not have gotten that tattoo, and I would have seen my grandpa a little more because I miss him. I would also confront my dad. Story 84. Telling my 15-year-old self to be proactive with my mental health. Everything works out. Just be patient. Story 85. Get diagnosed as autistic as soon as I can. 35 wasn't really the best time for that to happen. But 15 gives a lot more time to adjust. Stand up for myself a lot more. I let my parents decide what courses I was doing at school and ended up doing German, where I just read library books the whole time and ignored the lesson when I wanted to do drama. Either don't bother with university or try to find a course more closely linked to the job path I'm on now, so I'd have more of a head start. And pray that I could still meet some of the people I have met in this timeline. Story 86. Overall, I would do many things differently, but the very first actions would probably be to join the wrestling team and the local boxing gym. Story 87. Stop being passive and stand up to the bullies. Yes, there would be consequences, but having a memory of standing up for myself would make dealing with the impact on my mental health less severe. It might also have prompted the school to take the issue seriously. Even if that meant I got in trouble or had to change schools, I believe in the long run it would have been better. Story 88. Press for the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder diagnosis I would not receive for another 18 years, so that I could reach my full academic potential instead of burning out and making multiple attempts on my own life. Story 89. So many things. I would quit using drugs and alcohol. I would choose my friends wisely. I would focus more on my health, both mentally and physically. I would maintain a stronger relationship with my mother. I would strive to achieve better grades in school, not just basic honor roll. I would stop skipping school. I would get a decent job outside of the restaurant industry to avoid that path and start saving in a Roth individual retirement account and high-yield savings. 3 years later, I wouldn't rush moving out. I would stick to my scholarship at the University of Central Florida. I would stay home but buy a property to turn into a rental. These are the things I would change. Story 90. Be nicer to my brother, even though we have a decent relationship, so he does not harm himself in the future. Story 91. Realize the friend group is not a good one and not waste another 10 years before leaving and finding better people. I would take more risks and work to join the United States Air Force to be a pilot like I always dreamed of. Also, buy lots of Bitcoin in 2010. Story 92. I would be nicer to my parents. I stole their car and the house computer at 17 and ran away because my father did not approve of my lifestyle. 20 years later, I realized that caused him pain because I did not want to talk to him. I apologized sincerely and tried to explain my mindset back then, but I would definitely not do that if I had a second chance. Story 93. I would report them. I would not let manipulation such as, it would split up the family, you will never see your siblings again, prevent me from sending them to jail. Story 94. Buy Bitcoin. Don't smoke. Exercise more. Recognize the flirtations I was too unaware to see. Develop a talent. Learn a trade. Don't try to impress anyone but yourself. Realize all the unpleasant people were deeply insecure. Don't laugh maniacally while waving at oncoming traffic, or at least wear a mask. Story 95. I would lose a great deal of social awkwardness and self-esteem issues, which would greatly improve social interactions very early on. I would know that cute, awesome girl in college freshman year was interested in me right away and could pursue that instead of missing my shot. However, I also need to ensure I meet my future wife at the right time so that we end up together. If I don't handle that flawlessly, I won't have my children, and that would destroy me. Story 96. Instantly buy puberty blockers from the black market and female hormones so I do not have to deal with medical gatekeeping or further masculinization. Come out as a woman. Do not try to be a man and discard it all. Also, buying bitcoins. Story 97. Call my relatives who have since passed away and spend more time with them. Visit my parents much earlier. Story 98. Invest in Bitcoin and cent coins. Focus more on school to go to a better university. Convince my parents to put me in a private school. Be less intimidated by others. Stop trying to be cool or fit in. Listen to my parents. Story 99. Visit my grandmother more even though it would have been hard. Stop talking to people who were only using me. Pursue things I actually like. Ignore peer pressure. Get diagnosed by a psychiatrist and not be afraid to ask for help. Probably invest in something or just save more in general. Story 100. Not the age I would want to go back to, but since that is the scenario, go to the dentist to check for any signs of decay, even any tiny ones, and get that fixed. Probably get better looking eyeglasses. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.